When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello YouTube. So, in this video, we are going to be talking about the Grand Maester conspiracy. Now, this is going to be a multiple part series. I think I'm going to do this in 3 or 4 parts. I learned just from doing the first part, which you guys are going to be seeing today, that this is a topic that I want to do more in depth in a longer video. I don't think I want to do one, basic video on this. So I hope you guys all enjoy it. Please give this video a lot of love and support. It's taken me a while to get a lot of the information down on this. And I'm not going to be using Facecam much because a lot of the time I'm going to be, reading off, from the book, or I'm going to be using notes that I've taken myself. So yeah, strap in and I hope you guys all enjoy. Let's get into it. So before we get into the really Maester conspiracy, where we really start talking about what they were doing, how they were trying to kill off the dragons, and how they were plotting to really bring down the Targaryen house, we kind of have to talk about a few other things. Mainly with Rhaenys, just talking about how we got to the Great Council, and how really the Maesters were kind of just shitting on the Valyrians for some reason, as well as making some questionable decisions as well. So we have Rhaenys marry Corlys Velaryon, and she is basically the daughter of Aemon. This is at the time, the king right now is Jaehaerys. This is his first son Aemon, who is in line for the throne. Eventually though, Aemon is killed about 2 years after Rhaenys is married. So we have this big idea where who does Jaehaerys name as his heir? Jaehaerys then decides to pass over Rhaenys and go straight to his second son, Balon. Now, at this point, there had been really no big rulings that this was a major thing. Like, yes, Westeros houses did this, but this was not a Targaryen thing. For the most part, we really didn't have any type of prelude for how the Targaryens were going to, do that kind of stuff until we have the Great Council, which happens after Jaehaerys's, or actually right before Jaehaerys's death, my bad. So, Balon basically is gifted this role as the heir to the throne. And what I think is very interesting is that Maester Elessar, who is the Grand Maester at this point, gives his blessing on this decision and is a very strong supporter of this. So we see already that the Valyrians definitely are not favored with the Maesters and or the current ruling, which is something will be a reoccurring theme, which is something why I left it in here, because we will come back to it later on. Balon then is made the Hand of the King, and then for, it's really about a half of a year, and then he really doesn't like doing it, and he stops doing it, and then they go to a different Hand of the King. But only a few years later, Prince Balon actually has just a random, he just starts having pain. There's no real cause. He was out riding, and then he also all of a sudden starts having a major pain. And now King's Landing actually had gotten a new Maester. The Maester was Maester Runesider, and apparently he could not save Prince Balon, and actually his condition worsened after his care. All he could really do was ease his pain in passing, which just seems odd to me. Now, Maesters, remember, they are very famous for controlling poisons and other things. And I believe this could have been a situation where the Maesters let Balon die just to cause dissent within the Targaryen line. But I don't have a lot of proof on that. I think it's just odd that the describing words used in the books, that he couldn't really, he made things worse. He didn't help at all. It's weird. So, in 101 AC, we have this Great Council, and they basically come to the decision that Viserys should be the heir. Now, Viserys, more or less, was the male heir of Prince Balon. So again, they pass over the Valyrians in, having Rhaenys or even her offspring, because she actually had a male heir at this point. He was just younger. So again, going against this custom that we had never seen with the Targaryens before up to this point, Along with Viserys being decided the heir, Sir Otto Hightower is named Hand of the King. Now, this is really big because if you don't know, the Hightowers are pretty much in control of where the Maesters are in Old Town. So this is a huge major thing because the Hightowers, who are definitely in league and definitely have some connections with the Maesters, is now being gifted one of the biggest positions of power in Westeros. 2 years after Otto is appointed as the Hand of the King, Jaehaerys, who had been ruling for quite a bit, he was in his 90s when he dies, and Viserys becomes the new king. Viserys would rule for a little while with his wife, and then in 97 AC, which was 6 years before Jaehaerys dies, Rhaenyra is born. If you don't know who Rhaenyra is, she is pretty much the leader of the Blacks that we'll see in the future conflict with Dance with Dragons. Now, what I think is interesting is that we're given information that Viserys is kind of a pushover. He was not a king that was very willful and made a lot of the decisions. He was kind of like Robert in a way that he kind of just let his council rule. So basically Jon Arryn and stuff like that. So we are specifically told that Otto Hightower did most of the ruling for Viserys. So now we place, somebody very connected with the Maesters in a power of position. And then something else I wanted to bring up with this is when we're introduced to Daemon with Otto Hightower, it's all these good things about Otto Hightower and all these bad things about Daemon. It's very much a POV of the Maesters that are writing this, giving Daemon a bad name, because really, Daemon really is not. There's really nothing that supports why Otto Hightower would hate Daemon. Besides that, he's just a Targaryen, and he is next in line for all the laws at this point. Now, there is a rumor that Daemon slept with Otto's daughter, but again, no evidence of this. Nothing is cited. So, really, I don't get this. I think the Maesters throw this in just to discredit Daemon because he is going to be eventually on the black side of things, and really goes against everything the Maesters, do not want, that being dragons, and Daemon was a very fearless warrior and such. Now, at this point, Daemon also believed he was the prince and heir. Now, Daemon was the brother of Viserys, so going off of the laws that had been set by the council in 101 AC, this was true. The male line comes before the women, so Rhaenyra should have been passed over by other rulings. Not saying that that's right or wrong, but that is the precedent that had been set at this point. Now, at this point of the book in, Fire and Blood, we're introduced to the POVs are going to be various Maesters, Septon, Eustace, and Mushroom. Now, I did a video on Mushroom, but really we're seeing they're trying to say the noble side, and then they're saying Mushroom's kind of the, flamboyant, over dramatic stuff, which, for Mushroom, that is mostly true. Now, the next thing we really come to that's a big thing is Otto Hightower actually convinces Viserys multiple times to remove Daemon from offices. So he's Master of Coin, Master of, I believe, War, he's on that. And then he is basically made to control the Golden Cloaks. They weren't actually called the Golden Cloaks yet, but because of Daemon giving them Golden Cloaks, that is where they got that name. So, fun fact for you guys there. But he continuously is being targeted by Otto Hightower for almost no reason. I mean, there's a lot of rumors about him, but they're not really that different from any other common, guy at this point where, he's going visiting brothels and stuff like that. But yeah, again, a very unnecessary bias towards Daemon that you're seeing in the text. The next major thing we come to is in 105 AC, Viserys' wife dies. Now, to this point, Viserys' wife had not given him any other offspring, so Rhaenyra was the sole offspring of Viserys, which, is what it is. And the thing is, his wife died basically, having a child, and the child dies as well. Now, there's a rumor, again, there's really no proof given to this. We're told that some people told the king This could be, not true, could be true. We just don't know. So it is said that Daemon basically said that the baby that was born and then died of Viserys and his wife that died was the king for one day, or the heir for one day, prince for one day. We have, again, no idea if this is true. This hugely upsets Viserys, and Viserys publicly names Rhaenyra as his heir, causing Daemon to be extremely, mad and frustrated, and, basically causes him to leave. So you see how these actions that condemning Daemon for this long, eventually Viserys kind of falls under the pressure of this, and actually, really, he's pretty much just, gone over in the line of succession over rumors. There's no real facts or anything to back up what is being said about Daemon. So, again, I think this is clear manipulation by the Maesters and Otto Hightower that Daemon's not a good guy, we should pass over him in succession, and we move on. So, with this being said, Viserys now does not have a wife. And this is what I think is the most ironic thing. So after the Valyrians had been, or the Valyrians had been passed over a few times in the succession with Rhaenys and her children, Grand Maester Runesider says to take Laena Velaryon, who is 12 by the way, as his wife. Now, you might be thinking, oh, okay, well, the Maesters weren't actually trying to get a Hightower on the throne. Okay, but were they? Like, really? She's 12. Do you really think Viserys, who's in his, I believe his late 20s or his early 30s at this point, is going to pick someone that's 12? This is the Maesters, in my opinion, obviously just saving face, saying they, didn't obviously pick the Hightower, because obviously Sir Otto Hightower, who brings his daughter to court, and has been there the whole time in Alicent, she's described as being, pretty, she's 18, so Viserys obviously is going to choose her. Otto Hightower probably whispering in his ear. It's all too convenient. The Hightowers now, we've been saying this whole time, and plotting against Daemon with the Targaryens. It's odd that she becomes queen, especially when the only other option given is a 12-year-old. This won't be the first time marriage things come up that don't make any sense. We're just getting started. But this is the first one, in my opinion, where it's really obvious that some manipulation was going on, and that the Hightowers alongside the Maesters were definitely pushing for some sort of agenda. So, about a year after Viserys' wife dies, he then is married to Alicent, and this, would cause a little bit of drama, because Alicent and Rhaenyra, to start with, were on good terms, but then they really were fighting for who was the woman of King's Landing, pretty much the first lady, if you look at it as like the United States, how we have, the wife of the president's the first lady. Kind of that idea. Also, Alicent goes to work very quickly, giving Viserys 3 heirs. He has a daughter and 2 sons, Aegon and Aemond. Now, this starts to create this big idea that we had with the last king, Jaehaerys, and his offspring, and who would succeed him, is this whole idea of who is this succession going to be. Now, Viserys, being somebody that just doesn't really want to bother with any of this, Rhaenyra, in his mind, is still the heir, and he thinks in his mind that this is set in stone. Now, Alicent, her father, they all start pushing heavy that we need to get rid of Rhaenyra as the heir. Aegon should be the heir. So Sir Otto basically starts pushing for this super hard, to the point that he's actually removed as hand and actually returns to basically, Oldstown. That is how much he was pushing for this, that he needed, his line to be on the throne. It's very odd. I'm just saying, very odd the way we see this play out. But we'll continue on. About a year after Aemon is born, Daemon returns. He'd been warring on the sisters, and he returns. And for the most part, this is actually a very good meeting. After this has been a bad dismissal of Daemon, basically, and him leaving on his own terms. It's actually a good relationship. Daemon and his brother Viserys have a good relationship. This is again kind of frowned upon, that Daemon's returning, going back to his old ways, which again, normal dude stuff. And it's just really bad because they start then saying, Daemon having a close relationship with Rhaenyra is a bad thing in the Maester's perspective, apparently. And we see this rumor, basically, that Rhaenyra had either, had sex with Daemon, or she, had to have this, relationship with him. And again, we have almost no truth to this. It's almost again another smear campaign on Daemon, and it's the beginning of the smear campaign on Rhaenyra, where they're basically saying that Rhaenyra is kind of a slut. She just goes over with all these dudes. And the big point that I want to make here, because you'll see this with how her children get treated and how she is looked at, is that 2 years after this, so, Daemon returns or whatever, Rhaenyra marries at the age of 16. Now, they have all these possible candidates. She's a very popular candidate. At this point, she is being said as the heir of the throne. There are a lot of candidates you could propose to have Rhaenyra with. Now, again, we see a marriage pact that makes no sense to anyone. It's stated in the text that, or not in the text, but as in like multiple characters question, because Grand Maester Malos strongly pushes Rhaenyra Velaryon. Now, multiple characters, and we're given context in the text that it was heavily believed that he was gay. He did not prefer the company of women. And Grand Maester Malos is just like, doesn't matter. What does that matter? Right? Like, it'll be fine. He'll learn to accept it or whatever. Like, and you see why he pushes this in later, stuff, because it's basically a smear campaign. Because now they're going to start saying that Rhaenyra, because she's getting no male companionship with Rhaenyra, is going to look other places for male companionship. You see how this whole idea and smear campaign is being run upon on Rhaenyra. And this is going to lead to eventually this big split in A Dance with Dragons. This is one of the biggest things that eventually starts to lose Rhaenyra, her claim, is because the general public, even if it's not even true, it's just they're being heard this so much that Rhaenyra is sleeping with other dudes. Her children aren't, legitimate, they're bastards. And that is really the big part of what I wanted to discuss in part 1 of the Grand Maester, or the Maester conspiracy, is that this whole lead up to A Dance with Dragons and the major conflict where I believe the Maesters did help kill the dragons, and then even after it, is that we look at this and go, okay, a lot of these events that are happening so far are very much, they're trying to build up the Hightower and Maester power with the Greens. They're trying to make all the rest of the Targaryens in this time period frowned upon, that they're no good. If you're not with the Greens, or if you're not with the Hightower line, or you're not, in the Maester's good favor, you're getting completely and utterly talked shit on the entire time. Because I want you to think about it. Fire and Blood, Otto Hightower there's never a bad thing said about him, and why he has, why Daemon doesn't like him. There's never anything bad said about him. There's never anything bad said about the Hightowers in general. It is always these other characters that they're trying to put down that are against these characters. So, I hope you all enjoyed part 1 of this series. Part 2 will be up fairly quickly after this. I've done most of the research at this point. I did want to separate these videos because I think they're going to be pretty long, especially looking at this. This is just mostly a background and trying to build some of the parts of this story of why I believe the Maesters, there is something grander going on in the story. So thank you guys all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this video. It's taken a lot of time to do this because this has been easily the biggest project I've done in A Song of Ice and Fire. It isn't my strong suit, so I had to do a lot of research into this entire video. So any support you guys could give, I would appreciate it. I will try to get the second part as fast as I can. And I will see you guys all in the next video. I hope you all enjoyed, like I said, and I will see you guys in the next one.
If you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention.